We now know the transfer portal does not exist. Players can unenroll and do whatever they want. That's going to kill college football. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. Co-hosting today, Cameron Stewart of Locked On Baylor. Thanks for making that show your second listen every day. We will start with the transfer portal tanking integrity in college football. Now, players have learned no matter if they sign an NIL contract or not, they can unenroll from a school and just go somewhere else. And there isn't a transfer portal. There's no due process here. They can do whatever they want. We'll also talk Big 12 national championship odds. Utah. Utah. Las Vegas has them number one in the conference next season. My God. And the number one draft pick in the country. Number one draft pick is a Big 12 player. What does that do for the rest of the conference? If you hit subscribe, we get to keep our jobs that we love so. And then maybe Cam could afford a shirt that's better than whatever that New Balance thing is.
Crew neck. It's a crew neck sweatshirt.
Oh, I didn't know. It's the thicker material. What's the logo on the right there?
That's the most most famous club in England, right there.
Dragon? Okay.
That's a live bird.
The transfer portal going away. This was a topic I talked about a little bit last week and didn't really explain in full. It's a Miami player, now a Miami player. He was at Wisconsin, signs a 2-year NIL contract. Then after the first year says, I'm done. I'm going to the transfer portal. Wisconsin says, nope, can't leave. Have to play for us. Ha, ha, ha. So he unenrolls from the school and just goes to Miami. NCAA puts out a statement being like, yeah, I mean, whatever. I guess you can just kind of do that. So as many people are like, well, this is just a clickbaity, wild. The transfer portal still think it's not. If I'm a football player, why would I enter the transfer portal when I can just say, deuces, I don't go here anymore. I go somewhere else. And guess what? If I'm Miami or Oklahoma State or Texas Tech, I don't want to pull from the transfer portal. I just want to enroll a new kid here. It's that simple. No more paperwork. Yeah. Just welcome to the show. This is going to officially throw us into even further chaos.
It's amazing, honestly, that this has not been that this hasn't happened before. I guess because we're just starting to see. I guess it's because we're just starting to see the NIL the contracts out there. But make no mistake, this kid's going to play for Miami next year. Wisconsin's not going to win this case. But it just goes down to kind of the crux of this from the beginning of we as fans, we don't mind player empowerment. It was crazy what was happening to them before the days of NIL. You couldn't just if they were behind you in line at the fast food drive-thru, you couldn't pay it forward and order the meal for them. They couldn't order 55 burgers, 55 shakes, 55 fries. You couldn't do that. And now it's almost gone too far in terms of like you said, I mean, it's almost we're at a fugazi era right now. You could just do whatever. And Wisconsin has kind of fumbled the ball on this in terms of they make them sign this NIL contract, which actually isn't going to go into effect until maybe April when it goes before the House. This is where the people are arguing that yes, you should treat them as employees, but then there are the smaller schools that are like, we're not going to be able to keep up with that. Honestly, Drake, the thing that I've thrown out there is you get 6 years to play 5 seasons of college football. That's it. And maybe you make a special exception for our friends in Provo that have the 2-year break. But I don't think that's unfair of hey, you max it out however you want, make it JUCO, D3, whatever, sign whatever NIL deals you want. But 6 years to play 5 seasons of college football. After that, you have to move on, Alan Bowman. You have to move on.
Unless you go JUCO now, and then you get 4 years.
Yes, this is where it becomes even more convoluted because I didn't like that ruling to begin with. Again, it's a pro player empowerment thing, but it's one of those as a fan or obviously as a coach or administrator, you're like, how far does this have to go?
Yeah.
Like, how far does this have to go? And the NIL contracts is a step towards that, because obviously, like, if you're making money, that's going to tie you down to the school, and that's the real world. That's the working world. The world of contracts and non-competes in local news, but until that goes into effect, there's nothing that stops a player from doing this. And it's so bad with the NCAA that, again, you're like, this as a fan, you're like, this has gone too far, but how can you blame the player here? Like, it's well within his rights. You know what I mean? It's like, how can you blame him for taking this route? It seems weird. It seems slimy in some of these cases, but the NCAA, nor the schools, nor the conferences can do anything about it right now.
Can I take you back to Case Keenum and when he was this young phenom at Houston?
Yeah, sure.
And Houston fans looking around the room going, it's going to be all right for 4 years. We're going to have a good 4. This kid's pretty darn good. And what's sad is there were those guys that played for the Arkansas Razorbacks when I was growing up watching them as a fan, where I thought, wow, what a freshman standout this Alex Collins kid is. He's really going to be something for us for the next 4 years. And you know what? He was. That's gone away.
I think about it this year, like Bryson Washington has this breakout year, and now as the fan, you're like, boy, I hope he stays another year.
Yeah.
Boy, I hope he's on the team next year.
Don't buy the jersey. Yeah, don't buy the jersey.
It wasn't that long ago that we had this. It was pretty rare to transfer, actually, if you were a big time player, because you had to sit out the year.
Right.
Jarrett Stidham was running practice squad at Midway High School. Like, it wasn't a popular thing to do. And big time recruits, it almost never happened unless you had really fallen flat on your face. Sorry to step into that, but
my son, if God gives me an heir, will never know an era of watching a college basketball player or a college football player who day one walks on campus, gets to be the freshman phenom hero, and you think, wow, great. We're set up. I can't wait to watch this kid develop over the course of his time at my university, my favorite school. That era of football is dead. So when we ask the question of, is college football as we know it still alive? The answer is no. We will no longer have, wow. And some universities are going to Iowa State has seen a great influx of retention of players they had. A Rocco Beck, Avery Johnson could be examples of this. Those guys are going away. Baylor right now. Sawyer Robertson, he is that. He feels like the kid who's been there for a couple of years, and now you can buy the jersey, and he committed to the school. He's a transfer portal product. I mean, even your transfer portal guys can certainly find a new home somewhere, but the era of, wow, can't wait to watch this guy the rest of my life, that's gone.
It is. And you kind of hit the nail on the head in terms of, like, people think it's like icky when we say that, of like, this is not the college football we grew up with, because they're like, oh, well, you want go back to this and this and this. And we're like, no, but this is fundamentally, it's completely different, different. And basketball is an even better case of, like, you just don't know who your guys are going to be from year to year. Every team's replacing 2, 3, 4 starters every single year. And it's obviously the case in football too. I mean, you talk about Avery Johnson as a guy you can grow at Kansas State. I feel like they did that with Will Howard, but look where he is now. He's winning national championship somewhere else.
The great Michael Qualls at Arkansas. The great Kiko Haidar. Walk on. Those guys they don't exist anymore. They're not real. They're the real Fugazi.
Some would ask if they ever existed. Just hearing those names.
Coming up, the Big 12 National Championship odds are actually really, really stupid. This is Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Guess what? I did it. I caved. I picked the Chiefs to win. I put $100 in the Chiefs to win. Oh, no. You're rooting for enemies of the state. I don't care. You know what I do care about? Cash in my pocket. FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, 2 teams, endless possibilities. But guess what? I'm not going to ruin it by rooting for the Chiefs again. I'm going to put money on the Eagles this time. I can predict the first touchdown, Saquon Barkley. Call the MVP, Saquon Barkley. Or bet on the coin toss, tails. FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action with live betting all game long and can adjust your bets as the game goes. Live betting feature, you stay involved no matter what happens. And $5 bet can potentially win you $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl. That's the icing on the cake. Download the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet $5 And if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. That's Cameron Stewart of Locked On Baylor. We finally have the Las Vegas, far too early, predictions for who will win the national championship. And these are Utah, number one in the Big 12 conference, baby. I do want to, before we dive completely into the conversation, as stupid as that sounds, it's even more stupid that I think the highest rated Big 12 team is like 26th in the country. They have a whole lot of schools way above, like Clemson is up there above any Big 12 school. Same goes for USC, for South Carolina or Miami of Florida, even Oklahoma ranked above Big 12 schools. But number one in this conference, Utah, tied with Kansas State. Like, one of those I get. Sure, man. But my God, the Utah Utes after this last season to be number one, Arizona State at 3, Baylor, Iowa State, and Kansas.
Yeah, that one's weird too.
Are tied at 4, BYU at 7th, tied with Colorado, TCU, Texas Tech, UCF, and West Virginia. My God, BYU is tied with UCF and West Virginia. I don't know what to do anymore.
I had to double check it when I saw it come across my timeline today. This has to be 2024. Like, I was like, this has to be 2024. It's not. It's 2025. I just look. I'm not going to sit here and claim I've followed through the Utah transfer portal. Heard they've had a good little window here, but certainly not near the top. We've heard all about Tech. Tech's in the top 10 in the country, top 5 in their transfer portal. Haul. And so I see a team in Utah that did not have the year that Tech had this past year, not even close, and didn't bring in the guys that Tech supposedly brought in this year. And still, they're up at the top. Yeah. They're up at the top. I can't tell you how many Utah fans I had in my comments talking about how bad Isaac Wilson is. Now they're glad he was in the portal. And then he re-entered or came back to Utah, and they're like, here it comes, baby. National championship. They're not the best team in their own state in this conference. And they've got them. I just why? What has propelled them to be the number one team in this conference? Do they know it's no Cam Rising?
I don't hate Utah.
Does Vegas know?
I don't hate Utah. I don't hate their fans. I feel like they get a worse rap than 90% of them probably deserve. The 10% that are vocal and bad are okay, but also it's good for the conference. Like, rivalries are fun. You draw more attention. And then they get to be, I think if you're a BYU fan, if you really dislike Utah or you're a BYU fan, one and the same there, this is the best news ever for you. Because now they get to be insufferable again for an entire offseason and win yet another preseason Big 12 championship. Like, they've already got one of those trophies in the case. Now they get a second. What's wild to me, though, is this is Las Vegas. We talk a lot, and I'm pretty as apolitical as it gets. But when you were weighing the odds going to election night, you could bet on those. And it's the best representation of where the election actually sits, because the sports books want to make money. They want you to lose. So wherever you see the odds pushing toward, that is the most likely outcome. That's how gambling works. I don't understand how the sports book I don't know, man, just throw Utah in there. It feels like maybe they're just counting on a Big 12 school not winning a national championship. And sure, we haven't in a while, but also we took America's number one team for most of the year, Texas, to double overtime and got screwed on a call that won them that game. And now won them the Peach Bowl. And now I look at these and I think, really? This level of disrespect that we have BYU tied with West Virginia? I think West Virginia could be good, but anyone would know those two teams shouldn't be with each other in the preseason.
And the other one, the Kansas on the same level as Iowa State and Baylor, that is so perplexing to me.
Yeah.
We saw, second half of the year, Kansas was obviously terrific. That run they went on, then they lost by 4 touchdowns to Baylor. Let that be known. But Iowa State's a team that went to the conference championship game last year.
Yeah.
Baylor is one that was the hottest team in the conference the last month and a half, 2 months of the season. And they both bring a lot more back, household names that as the Big 12 fan, than Kansas does. So that, like, where is this coming from? And that's what's so surprising is Vegas knows. Like, Vegas knows. And I'm wondering if it's almost in a weird backwards way, like a respect for the Big 12 in that they have a reputation over the last couple of years to just throw a curveball at you, like Arizona State winning the conference, Oklahoma State being in that game last year, 21 Baylor winning the conference championship. Is it just like, are they taking that much into account of like, hey, so someone's got to be the crazy one this year. Why don't you put your money on Utah to be that team? That's the only thing I can think of, man.
Which, if that was the case, and by the way, Jalen Daniels is back for Kansas. He's good. So we'll talk household.
Yeah, he is coming back.
By the way,
Evan Neal's not. Yeah,
I would compare, and this is going to anger some people. I would compare Oklahoma State and Utah. I would liken them to one another. I compare them as two fairly similar programs. Longtime head coach, best head coach in program history, have been there, weren't there last year, did not meet expectations. Both of those are in the same boat. Oklahoma State is slated third to last, right next to Houston. So why do we give Utah the number one spot? And again, I'm not mad at Utah fans.
They get 12 spots higher for winning that game in September.
I don't hate you. I just don't think it's crazy to me that BYU plus $1,000. They win the national championship, you get $50,000. Utah has, like, their odds are half as good. Like, you putting $1,000 on Utah would only get $25,000. It is. I think you put it much better than I was able to articulate earlier. I was talking about like lines and odds, and Vegas wants to win money. They know. Vegas always knows something. Yeah. And so when you see a line that's probably very representative of where, somebody who knows something is pushing that line in the direction that it goes. We talk about this in the NFL a lot with the Chiefs. Someone knows something and someone's going to make, Vegas will never lose money. They can't. This is absurd to me. Baylor that's one of the few things that make sense about this. Baylor being fourth in the Big 12. You know what? Cool. That's
solid. I think they have a real chance to win this thing. But if you're in the top four, you have the chance, right? But the Vegas always knows, except for the 2024 Big 12 predictions as well. I think that should be noted. They got that wrong too. But and look, not for nothing. Preseason rankings, take them with a grain of salt and everything. But Utah is not showing up on these. They're not showing up in preseason top 25s. BYU is.
BYU's number 9.
Is. Yeah, I'm
on
saying
ESPN's
BYU's
number 9.
Right. They are firmly in this. Arizona State is that next team. And then Baylor and Iowa State are rounding them out too. And that should be your top 4. And they got 3 of those. I don't know where the Utah thing is coming from.
Maybe they got really Utah and BYU confused. Maybe they're like,
could have been
one of those teams from the Bumblebee State. I do think it's like the Bumblebee State, or what?
I believe that's true. Salt Lake Bees.
A wild moniker. Coming up, number 1 draft pick in the country, I should say, is from this conference. Does that bode well for Baylor or Texas Tech or anybody else? This is Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by, it's that time of year again, TurboTax. TurboTax is your place to make taxes easy. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were ever going to get any money back, and then waiting and wondering, worrying even more. Now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress. You can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. All so you can get the most money back, guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is taxes. Get an expert now at TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Visit TurboTax today. Cameron Stewart of Locked On Baylor. Newest projections have Shedeur Sanders as the number 1 pick in the NFL draft in 2025. Now, this has been met with pushback because everyone likes to hate the kid. I don't really know why. We watched him play against Baylor, a pretty good defense. He did well enough to win. Hail Mary, go win the game.
Himself, basically. Yeah.
Really, the only time that we saw him, maybe 2 games we saw him just really lay an egg, were that Nebraska game and the BYU game in the bowl. Outside of that, he played. He did things that were Heisman-esque, things that you want in a possible franchise quarterback. Reminds me a lot of C.J. Stroud at Ohio State. When he was picked by the Texans, most people were like, "Oh, this guy is not that good," and
they missed out on Bryce Young.
Yeah, it's like, oh, his IQ test was low.
The Wonderlick,
yeah.
Not Vince Young low, but low.
Like, he's not smart enough to be an NFL quarterback, and then he steps in day one and makes the Texans a contender. I think Shedeur Sanders could be that. The Big 12 is about to land not just the Heisman Trophy winner, but the #1 overall draft pick, and they're 2 different guys. Granted, same team, but that team went 9-4 this season, 9-3 in Big 12 play, didn't make the conference title. This isn't a matter of Texas, per se, winning the Big 12, having a Biletnikoff winner, the Heisman winner, and a different guy being the #1 overall draft pick who's a big DN. This is Colorado, who went 9-4, dominating at the top of college football. Do you think that has a trickle effect to a Baylor, to a Texas Tech, to the rest of the Big 12? Can we count on Colorado being a breadwinner for this conference?
Yes. If Deion is there, sure. Like, Deion is going to always attract that kind of talent. I mean, you're seeing it this year with their recruiting class, even with Shedeur and Travis out the door. They're reeling in some of the top high school talent in America. Yep. And we know that that's not even Deion's strength. His strength is the portal. So yes, I absolutely think that Colorado can be that. And therefore it probably does have a trickle down effect for everyone else. We talked about it on the Squad Show a couple of weeks ago, like Deion leaving the conference when we thought that was a real possibility is bad for business. It's bad for business for us writing headlines, but worse for, the product of football in this conference. So yeah, I absolutely can see that. And in terms of, and what I love about looking at NFL draft rather than, should this team get in here or should this guy get this kind of respect? Like, the NFL, for the most part, doesn't care what conference you come from. They don't care. They don't care what Kirk Herbstreit thinks of the conference. They don't care what teams should be in the college football playoff. They don't give I won't say it. Say it. It's a family program. But like, that's where you're going to start to see like a guy like Shedeur Sanders going 1 overall, possibly 1-2, by the way, in the Big 12, to where us as fans are like, yeah, dude, we know they can ball. Like, you know what I mean? The 2 quarterbacks facing off in the Super Bowl are Big 12 guys, for the second time in 3 years. The matchup last year was an all Big 12 matchup. So you can talk all we want about how this conference, it's not the big boys. Yeah, just the guys that succeed in the NFL. And I think Shedeur is going to succeed in the NFL. Number one, it's tough. It's tough. I think they might like Cam Ward as well, but Ward is not as polished a quarterback as Shedeur Sanders is. Like, Shedeur, people they try to make him out to be something he's not. They think he's a diva because he's the coach's kid. And I think he's really slapped back that narrative most of this year. He kind of threw his teammates under the bus against Nebraska, but everything after that has been positive. He's been a leader. He gets thrown in as this dual threat gunslinger, and he's neither of those things. He's not a running threat. I don't know why that reputation has found him. And he's not a gunslinger. He completes 74% of his passes, man. That's like best in the country kind of stuff. And when you're looking for the NFL, this is an aside, but when you're looking for a quarterback at the NFL, accuracy is better than anything. So yes, this is good for the Big 12, Drake.
He's good at the football. Looking at NFL,
all of us.
CBSSports.com's NFL mock draft, and what they have, I think this is the more fascinating storyline than even Shedeur being #1 overall. They have Chris Trapasso has the Las Vegas Raiders trading up for the #1 overall pick to select Shedeur Sanders. That almost feels, it doesn't almost, it is. It feels like a slap in the face to, according to reports, Las Vegas says they will not talk to Deion Sanders, not interested in Deion, despite his camp having interest in them. Then they draft up just to take his son. I know he's not about to pull a, was it Eli Manning that held out. I was like, I don't want to go play for you.
Did not want to play for San Diego.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see that level, but his son gets drafted by the organization where we all thought, well, if his son does get drafted by them, certainly Deion will be the head coach. Now they didn't want him to be the head coach, and they draft his son.
Deion has a part to play in this, by the way.
Yeah, okay.
He'll say what he can, but Deion has a part to play in all of this. The way that Archie Manning did for Eli. It happens, man. It happens. It would be weird.
It would not be. It'd be a little awkward, I think. Well, Tom Brady walks in the room, and that's the guy that didn't want Deion, and now you draft his son. Would that create a rift? Do you think? Nick Maravets was on the show yesterday on Locked On Big 12 and talked at length about how he's not worried about Deion's future success without Shedeur Sanders being in that program. Are you worried about Deion being the LeVar Ball of NFL dads?
Well, see, that was kind of the thing I was thinking of when you were winding up that question LeVar didn't get an assistant coaching job with the Lakers. It turned out okay. Nor the Hornets either, but I think he's big in that record company now. But see, here's where it's tough. LeVar was so easy to troll as NBA people. Yeah. You would just bring up his average like they do with Stephen A. Smith. Deion this shouldn't matter, but it does, is a Pro Football Hall of Famer. Yeah. And he's a very influential voice in football.
His 30 for 30. I don't know where we got an arc of Deion being bad guy, because in that 30 for 30 drop, people were like, yeah, man, that dude's badass.
Yes. And then he went back to villain, and now he's back kind of, I think, for the most part, in the good graces of the footballing public. That school thing in Texas. That was shady. So do I think he becomes that? Probably not. I do think Deion tries to stay out of it for the most part. I think he'll have something to do with where Shedeur goes in the draft in terms of they can control those interviews and everything. But I think he will more or less stay out of it, especially if he is still coaching at Colorado, which looks like it will be the case for a couple of years here. I don't think he'll put Shedeur into too much hot water. And you know what? If he does, Shedeur has shown he can kind of handle it. The things are going well at Colorado, but it is still more of a circus than most other programs in college football. And Shedeur lived up to the hype. He lived up to the expectations, and he led that team. And he was better than most people thought he was going to be, just thought Nepo baby. And they were better than most people thought they were going to be this year at Colorado. So I think Shedeur can handle it. I really do.
There's a great tweet probably a couple weeks ago that went viral. It said, brother just woke up from an 8-year coma. And the number one quote tweet was, tell him Braun's still going, which is a great quote tweet. The number 2 one was, first question, LeVar flopped, right? All the kids flopped, right? Tell me LeVar flopped. No. All 3 of them made it, though. One of them not on the basketball court. That is
one of them's a sympathetic figure, which is wild. Lonzo should be having this great career right now. That's the wildest of all. Not that the kid did anything wrong, but it's one of them's playing on a max contract. The other has the biggest song in the country right now, and the third one is a really good player who's never going to realize potential because of freak injuries.
What is it, Latvia or Lithuania? He's like, just don't send me back. Please don't send me back. Please,
God, no.
And LeVar went away. He stopped talking. He was like, I told you.
It's wild.
It is wild. Pretty darn cool. That's Cameron Stewart at Real Cam Stewart on the Bird app. Spell the Bird app, right?
Yeah. Larry Bird, yeah.
Things. This has been and always will be Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Dose Grande.